Hello, fifth graders, and welcome to your language arts lesson for today. For today, you will need your language arts binder, a highlighter, or if you don't have a highlighter, that's fine, something to underline with. It might be a nice colored pen or marker, a pencil, and this last one is a dictionary, and this really just means like access to some kind of a dictionary function. So if you have a physical dictionary in your house, great, you can go grab it. If you do not, that's also just fine because there are all kinds of options in terms of online dictionaries. So if you're going the online option, you'd want to look for like dictionary.com or merriam-webster.com. Those are great dictionary features, okay? But you're going to want to have access to a dictionary. So again, either a physical one, great, and if not, an online version is also great, okay? So, fifth graders, we are going to be starting. I should add an objective to this. We're going to be looking at our poetry unit today. So, our objectives are going to be kind of threefold. One, we're going to talk about using a dictionary and really looking at all of the different features of a dictionary, right? And we'll see what that looks like. In addition, we're going to work on understanding rhyme scheme. This is something that's going to come up as we're going through our poetry unit. And so understanding rhyme scheme. And then also we're going to just do a super brief introduction of figurative language. Okay, so introducing figurative language, we're going to talk about this throughout. And so we're not really going to do a deep dive into figurative language, but we'll take a look at it so that when we do start trying to be a little bit more in depth with it, that you've been exposed to it. So if you need to go get any of those materials to get yourself situated, you can go ahead and do that. And then come on back and we'll get into it. So from our most recent materials pickup, you should be able to find quite a few items in your packet. So one, there should be this how to use a dictionary. These are the notes that we're going to go through today. Two, there should be this dictionary entries for in-class practice. Okay, so go ahead and make sure you have that. Three, there should be a dictionary assignment sheet. And four, there should be a poetry terms and concepts defined. Okay, all four of these items are going to take us straight on through our objectives for today. So find those. Again, pause if you need to find those. And then we're going to get into it. Okay, I'm going to flip you around actually, and we'll take a look at your work today. So we're going to start out with this how to use a dictionary. So some of you might be thinking, like, I know how to use a dictionary. And that's true. You probably do know how in general to use a dictionary, but we're going to go into like some in-depth discussion of different parts of a dictionary, what we see as parts of a dictionary. So here we go. So as we're looking at like a typical dictionary entry, it's going to look like this, okay? We see, this is the word, and there's some funky letters, and then an abbreviation, and some more letters, and some italicized letters, etc., etc. And I'm kind of being vague because really what we're going to do is get into what those all are. So this first word here, which is dilapidated, so this first word here is known as the entry word. So we're going to highlight or underline that term there, the entry word. And we talk about like dictionary entries, and that's, a dictionary entry, right? And this is the entry word. And we see in this version, though, different dictionaries might use different formatting, but this dot here is separating the number of syllables in the word. So think back to your younger grades, right? Dilapidated. There's 5 syllables there, 5 syllables in this word. So this dictionary uses dots. You'll see other dictionaries do that. Others maybe just use a space, a dash, a hyphen. So you'll see different ways it's formatted, but this is really just separating out the syllables in the word. Next comes the pronunciation. Okay, this part here in parentheses, it's almost always going to be in parentheses. This is the pronunciation, and it tells you how the word is pronounced. So again, there's usually a key in a dictionary that gives you a pronunciation guide, but like these upside down E's, this is called a schwa. And it's kind of a sound of like, ugh. It actually appears a lot in English words. So dilapidated. So we see that a lot, but that's what that upside down E means. Dilapidated. This symbol here is telling me that's the syllable that's emphasized. So I say dilapidated. That mark is telling me it's a long A. So there's all kinds of different parts of it, but this is telling you how to pronounce a word. If you're online, if you're looking at an online dictionary, you often see a little speaker symbol and you can actually press it and it will read to you the different pronunciation versions. I use that feature a lot. If I come upon a word I don't know, I go online, I hit the pronunciation speaker symbol and it reads it to me. So it's kind of nice. Okay, the words part of speech, which is typically going to be abbreviated or shortened, comes next. So we have our entry, our pronunciation, and then this is the part of speech. And you can see it's abbreviated or shortened, right? It doesn't spell it all the way out, but ADJ, what part of speech does that sound like to you? Yeah, an adjective, right? This is an adjective. So we see that part of speech. Next, we get a whole bunch of information about the word's origin. In other words, where does this word come from? So we see this is enclosed in brackets, right? And that's typically going to be the case. These things here are called brackets, okay? And so this one tells you the language of origin, which when you see L in a dictionary, that's going to mean Latin. And then it provides the root words in italics, followed by the English translation. So dilapidated comes from dis in Latin, lapidare in Latin, dislapidare, which dis means apart, and lapidare means to throw stones at. So basically, we're looking at, this being not the definition of the word. This is not what the word means, but it's where the word comes from. And so you want to think about, right, these derivatives that we talk about in Latin. This is building off of it. So it's telling us where the word came from, okay? After the origin, after these brackets, come the definition. So again, this is not the definition, but the definition starts here. Falling to pieces or broken down. That's the definition. It's way after all this other information, okay? Often, more than one definition is provided, and so it's kind of your job, my job, our jobs as readers to choose the definition that fits the best in a particular context. So if you said that the house was dilapidated, we have to say the house was falling to pieces or the house was broken down. Probably either would work, but the first one's better. Versus the car was dilapidated, that broken down would probably be the better choice there. So you have to kind of think about the context there. I also want to say it's really important to note that you need to include an entire definition. So sometimes students will be looking up words and they just stop in the middle of the definition and it totally changes the meaning. So for instance, if you said that the house is dilapidated and you said dilapidated means falling, that wouldn't make sense, right? If you said the house was falling, that means something totally different than the house was falling to pieces, right? It's not a house that's like tumbling down from the sky. No, it means that all of these parts of the house are kind of falling apart, right? It's broken. It's a broken down house, okay? So you need to include the entire definition, meaning falling to pieces, okay? And again, I kind of say here what I explained. The sentence, the house was dilapidated, that means that the house is falling to pieces, not that the house is falling. So sometimes students think that, oh, I'm just going to take a shortcut and only write down like the first word or two of the definition. But that's not going to work all the time because sometimes that totally changes the meaning. So you have to make sure that you're writing down the entire definition. And I mean, like when I say entire definition, I don't mean like if there's 8 definitions, don't write them all down. But if you pick the second one, you want to write down the entirety of the second definition, okay? The final part of most dictionaries would be the alternate forms of the word. So maybe it tells you how to make it plural. Maybe it tells you the future or past tense of a verb. Maybe it gives you that verb or that word in different parts of speech, which is what happens here, right? The word is dilapidated, which is an adjective, and at the end it tells us dilapidation is the noun form of it, okay? So dilapidation would be the state of falling apart, okay? So you'll see a lot of this at the end, especially if there's like an irregular form of a verb, an irregular form of the plural, you'll get that included at the end. Finally, when you are looking, and this would be in a physical dictionary, the physical dictionary. So the top of a dictionary page, a page of a dictionary typically is going to look like this. You'll see these two words here, and then it'll start kind of getting into the different definitions of different words, okay? So the two larger words right here are known as guide words. So these are the guide words on a dictionary page. And so that tells us different is the first word on that page of the dictionary. Dim is the last word on a page of a dictionary. And that tells you that every other word on that page comes between those words. And the purpose of the guide word is really to save you time as you're looking things up in a dictionary. So if you're looking up the word, I don't know, doom, which is spelled D-O-O, you don't have to turn to this page and then go through every entry to see if doom is on there. You look at the guide words and say, okay, D-O, that's not between these two words, so you can keep on moving. Okay, so the guide words are meant to help you quickly find a word in a dictionary. Finally, after going kind of all through this information, it's important to remember that every dictionary is going to be a little different. So the formatting might be different. You might see a dash instead of a dot. You might see, instead of brackets, you might see different kinds of brackets or parentheses. The pronunciation guide shouldn't be really too different, but maybe it'd be a little bit different. So it's important to remember, though, that even if everything's kind of different, the basic components should be pretty consistent. You should be seeing an entry word and a pronunciation guide and the parts of speech and the origin and the definition and the alternate forms of the word. That's going to be pretty standard. Even in an online dictionary, you're probably not going to find, well, you're not going to find guide words in an online dictionary because you're not looking at pages, right? If you look a word up online, it's just going to take you to that word's entry. So that'll be a little bit different. So keep this handy because we're going to go to the back of it pretty soon here. But you should have these dictionary entries for us to do a little bit of practice. So I'm going to have you kind of looking. I'm going to ask you questions. If you need to pause while you're thinking it through, that's great. Please do so. But you should actually be actively trying to answer these questions as we go. So first things first, we have this first example here. So what do we call this first thing here? This first part, what is that called? This is the entry word, okay? So this is the word that is the entry. Good. Followed by the pronunciation. This word is pronounced indefatigable. Indefatigable. It's one of these kind of big words, but it's, if you kind of break it down to its root, it's got this word fatigue in it. And if you're fatigued, it means you're tired, okay? Fatigable would mean that you're able to be tired. Indefatigable means ultimately that you cannot be tired, something that cannot be tired. So this is our pronunciation, kind of gives us a little bit of an idea. So what is the root language here? Remember, the root language would be in these brackets. We see an L again, which tells us the root language is Latin. This is Latin. How many syllables does this word have? How many syllables? Remember, we see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is a 6-syllable word. Good. What is the definition? I've already told you. What is the definition? Remember, the definition, it has to start after the bracket. So even though there's all this information, that's the end bracket. So the definition is that cannot be tired out. So another thing would be like something that cannot be tired out, right? So if I am indefatigable, it means I cannot be tired out, okay? In this case, there are no alternate forms of this word. So there's nothing that they're going to provide for this. Okay. So first we start with the entry word. The entry word is increase. What part of speech is this entry word? Remember, the part of speech is going to come after the pronunciation. So we see this word VT, which is another way, it stands for verb. It also stands for a transitive verb. If a verb is transitive, that means it can take an object. Okay, so a transitive verb, you can increase something. Okay, What is our language of origin? We're looking at Latin again. Good. So we see multiple definitions. Now, this one is tricky because it actually has more than one part of speech, right? So the definition for our verb is to become greater in size, amount, degree, etc. Or to make greater in size, etc. But then we get to the noun definitions, and there's multiple noun definitions. So an increasing or becoming increased, or the result of an amount of increasing. So we see a lot happening here. How about this next one? How many parts of speech can this word be? Dig. How many parts of speech? I see VT, meaning, of course, verb. And meaning noun, right? So dig can be more than one thing. So if we're going to start with our verb definitions, what is the fourth definition of this verb? So we look for 4, and then we see to find out as by careful study. Good. We have some slang definitions. Slang is kind of like not the formal use of it, of the word. And the slang definitions here are to understand, like, I dig what you're saying. I dig it. Yeah. Or to like it, right? I really dig that dinner you just made, right? Good. What is the noun form of this word? We see this at the very end. Remember, alternate form. So our noun form here is, well, an alternate noun form, because I guess dig can be a noun in and of itself. Digger. What's our language of origin here? This one's kind of hard. You see that FR, and I think you might, what would you think that FR would be? FR stands for what? Probably French, right? And so this would be something called Old French, which you might have heard of Old English or Middle English, right? So languages transform over time. So there are some versions of English that are almost, well, I mean, they are a whole other kind of language if it's Old English, right? And so this would be Old French. Or DU, this one's a little trickier. That stands for Dutch. Stands for Dutch. A lot of our languages of origin are going to be Latin or Greek, because a lot comes from Latin or Greek for us. So we're going to stop there, 5th graders, but part of your homework, I'm going to be asking you to answer some questions about dictionaries. So you want to make sure that you understand that. Okay, let's go back to how to use a dictionary. However, we're going to flip this over and talk about rhyme scheme. Okay? So a poem's rhyme scheme is determined by the words at the end of each line. So we look at the last word of a line to help us to understand rhyme scheme. So when we're determining whether or not a poem has a rhyme scheme, the words at the end of lines are designated with letters. And then if the words rhyme with one another, then they should share the same letter. So we have a bunch of different rhyme schemes. These are similar poems, but not entirely the same. So we see my cat is nice. So we always start with that rhyme scheme of, or the letter of A. That first poem, if the poem rhymes, the first line should be A. My cat is nice. My cat likes mice. So we ask, do mice and nice rhyme? Yeah, so we should have another A, right? We want to say that that rhymes. My cat is fat. Does fat rhyme with nice? No, so we go on to B. I like my cat. Cat rhymes with fat, so we say B. So our rhyme scheme here is going to be A, B, B. My cat is nice. Again, we start with A. My cat is fat. Fat does not rhyme with nice, so we don't write A, we go to B. My cat likes mice. Mice rhymes with nice, so the A here should be an A here. I like my cat. Fat rhymes with cat, so B and B. Okay, my cat is gray. We start with A again. My cat is fat. Fat does not rhyme with gray, so we write B. My cat is cute. That rhymes with none of them, so we go on to C. I like my cat. Cat rhymes with fat, so B. So you're going to see all kinds of, these are pretty simple poems, and I did that on purpose to introduce us to this, but it's not always going to be that way. There might be more complicated rhyme schemes. We always want to look at a stanza at a time. So in poetry, a stanza looks like what we would call a paragraph, right? We're separating out our stanzas. And so that's your hint for rhyme scheme. However many lines are in a stanza, that's how many letters should be in your rhyme scheme. So if there were 7 lines in a stanza, you would need to have 7 letters in your rhyme scheme. If there are 8 lines in a stanza, you'd need to have 8 letters in your rhyme scheme. Finally, it's really important to note, poems don't have to rhyme. Not every poem is going to have a rhyme scheme, okay? Often, poems have rhyme schemes, but it is not mandatory, it is not required. And we'll have that sometimes this year. We'll be looking at poems, and the answer will be there is no rhyme scheme, okay? I'll ask that question, what is the rhyme scheme? And the answer will be there is no rhyme scheme. Well, we're also going to see some poems where there's more than one rhyme scheme, which will be a little bit different too. So 5th graders, as we're not done yet, we still have our 3rd objective to get to, but as we're looking at your homework for tonight, you have 2 sides. This first one is a dictionary assignment. So you're going to be looking at these dictionary entries and answering these questions all the way down to number 6 here, which is on the bottom of the page. And it's really just asking you to work with this dictionary entry. The back side, this is a 2-sided assignment, is a rhyme scheme assignment. So I'm asking you to read these poems. These are all written by a gentleman named Ken Nesbitt. And then for each poem, I want you to identify the rhyme scheme and write it below. So practicing what we did together, you're going to fill in your rhyme scheme. When you're done, I want you to submit pictures of both sides of your work. Okay, our last objective, 5th graders, really just to introduce these terms, some of which we've talked about, but we're going to go through super quickly. And we're going to put this into practice as we're working through. So, poem terms and concepts defined. This first one is rhyme scheme. Some poems have rhyme schemes as determined by the last word of every line. Lines that rhyme are assigned the same letter. The number of letters in a rhyme scheme should match the number of lines in a stanza. But not every poem has a rhyme scheme, and we'll keep practicing this throughout our unit. Poem titles, this is a formatting question. Poem titles should follow capitalization rules, so we're going to capitalize the important words of poem titles, and we also put poem titles in quotation marks. We don't underline them, but we put them in quotes, which we'll practice as well. A simile, those of you who have been doing that optional reading practice, we've kind of been talking about this in those assignments. So you're going to have kind of a leg up right now. A simile occurs when two things are compared using these words like or as. Those are important words. One example would be the stars shined like diamonds. The stars aren't literally diamonds, but they're shining like diamonds. Another example would be the shirt was as shiny as the night sky. So we see with like and as there. A metaphor, though, is when you're comparing two things by saying it is the other thing, even though it's not literally true. So his words were a symphony of joy. It's not literally true, but it's comparing them, right? And we're getting an idea of how happy he must have been. Finally, personification. Personification occurs when something that is not human is described as doing human things. An example would be the wind whispered through the leaves. Wind can't whisper. Wind doesn't have a voice. So we're kind of giving it this human quality. Okay, but we can picture what that means, right? The whispering of the wind. So these are all terms that are going to come up as we're working through our unit together, okay? So you'll want to keep this sheet handy, and we'll talk about it as we're getting to assignments. We're going to revisit these concepts. You don't have to memorize them, at least not yet, but it's good for you to be familiar with them. Okay, kind of a lot of information there, but hopefully not too bad. So we've got dictionaries that we talked about, and your homework assignment is going to be looking at how much you got from that. We did rhyme scheme, which your homework is also going to get into, and then we introduced some terms that we're going to be using in this poetry unit. So 5th graders, let me know if you have questions. I'm looking forward to seeing your work. I'm excited to start our poetry unit. It's gonna be a little different. We're gonna shift gears a little bit, but it's also going to be great. Okay, so let me know if you have questions, and we can chat about them later. Good luck.